Hi guys, welcome to Multiverse. Today we're going to take a look at the Atom and some Atom related characters. So let's get started. The first Atom was Al Pratt. You guys may be familiar with Ray Palmer, but long before Ray Palmer, during the era of World War II, there was this little guy called Al Pratt who was also the Atom, who was actually the original Atom. Basically, at the time, he didn't really have any powers. He was just a short, bulky guy who was a bit of a scrappy guy with his fist. This is about as close to his look I was able to reproduce. An awesome comic showing Al Pratt is the comic The Golden Age by Jerry Robinson and Paul Smith. I would strongly suggest you try it out. It's not only just about the Atom; it's about the Justice Society of America. But the Atom played a permanent role in that series. And then in the late 70s, or in the 70s, early 80s, uh, there was this version of the character. At the time when I discovered him, he was pretty much a father figure to a character known as Nuklon, who was his godson. We're going to see him in a bit. That was when I discovered that look of the character. That was around more or less the time of a series called Infinity Inc., which pretty much featured the next generation of heroes after the Justice Society of America. Basically, it features their children and their in the case of our friend Al Pratt, it featured his godson, known as Nuklon, and that's pretty much it for our friend Al Pratt. Then at some point, DC decided to reinvent the character, recreate the character, and it was recreated with the Ray Palmer version of the character. A lot of people are probably more familiar with that version. That's the version that pretty much endured uh, pretty much since the late 50s, early 60s, all the way up to today, basically. At a few key places, they tried to reinvent the character or even replace the character, and it didn't really work out. I didn't cover every version of Ray Palmer's costume. Basically, and the same with all the atoms. Basically, I'm going to cover the most important version or the most influential versions. And a lot of the other costumes that those guys had were pretty much variations of what you're going to see in this video. Like basically, they tried to reinvent this costume, but often they would just like cut the top of the mask or very minor modification just to say that they created a new costume. But most of their new costumes were a variation of the versions you just saw and of this version. So basically, if we take these two versions and tweak them a bit, you're going to pretty much get all the Atom costume. This was a version that he had around a period that was known as the Sword of the Atom. Basically, it was the name of the series. At some point, Ray Palmer became very small. He discovered some sort of small colony. It's been a long time since I read those comics, so it's not really fresh in my memory. But basically, he ended up being a swashbuckling character in a tiny, tiny world, in a microscopic world. They tried to replace him at some point with a new Atom character. Sadly, I couldn't really find a proper chance to reproduce that character, and I would have ended up with something that pretty much was similar to the previous costume you saw, because this costume wasn't that different from that, with just a few tiny variations. So I didn't really show him in this video, sadly. So earlier I mentioned Nuklon, the godson of the original Adam Alprat. That's pretty much what he looked like when I first discovered the character. I wasn't really reading Infinity Inc. at the time, so I only knew this character, or most of the rosters from Infinity Inc. as guest stars in other books. So originally, this is pretty much what the character looked like. I will show in a bit how he looked like when I really saw the character as guest stars. Like I remember he was a guest star in a series called The Weird, which was an awesome series. Which reminds me, I should probably make a video about that. And so early on, this is what the character looked like, and later on, they would basically just remove the mask and pretty much keep the same look. And that for a long time, that's pretty much how the character looked. That's the look I've known associated to the character for the longest time. But of course, later down the line, they would actually change the look. We're going to take a look at that in just a bit. So here is pretty much the same version without the mask. For a long time, that's the version that I knew. And as again, I pretty much just knew him as guest stars in other books. I wasn't really reading the main Infinity Inc. And later down the line, he was reinvented as Atom Smasher. Basically, he joined the Justice Society of America at the time where Jeff Jones was writing the book. I think he was co-writing the book with David Goyer at first, but it pretty much became known as the Jeff Jones runs for some reason. And basically, he brought the character into the Justice Society of America, and then he had the storyline where his grandma was killed or something on a plane. And then he went nuts and pretty much adopted that look at that time, or a look not unlike this one. Basically, I needed short sleeves and a few other tweaks here and there, but roughly that's what the character looked like at the time. I read the JSA for a bit at that time, but I don't know. I didn't finish the whole run. I don't recall exactly why. Could be that I just didn't really have the time, or maybe I lost interest along the way. I'm not sure. It's been a long time. And then there was this character known as Damage. He was introduced around the time of Zero Hour, if I'm not mistaken, and he is the actual son of Al Pratt, as opposed to Nuklon, who was just his godson. Here, Damage was supposed to be the actual son of Al Pratt, and I have to admit, never read this comic. I always thought the character was uninteresting, so I never even bothered reading his comic at the time when he was Damage. And they tried to add him to the Teen Titans for a while. I assume to try to boost the sales on his own series. Didn't really work out. The series was quickly canceled. He may have been part of the Titans later on. I'm not sure. And then he became he joined the Justice Society of America during Jeff Jones' runs also. I'm not sure if he was there at the same time as Nuklon. It's been a long time since I read those comics, and there was a few incarnation of the Justice Society of America. Basically, there was this series with Jeff Jones and David Goyer, and then they relaunched the series and added the Kingdom Come Superman or something. And that's when I was aware that Damage was into the Justice Society, and that's it. Although I have to admit the look, I really enjoyed the look. Again, I think he probably should have the short sleeves. But then again, other than that, that's pretty much the look I remember him having. I mostly remember this look from some Alex Ross painting that I saw, but I didn't really read the comics at the time when he had that look. But I thought it was a good look. So that's pretty much it for now for our Atom video and Atom related characters. I could have gone into more detail about some of the characters. If you guys want that, just ask me and I'll see what I can do. So that's pretty much it for now, guys. So as always, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.